Okay, so very good morning to all of you. The last topic I think that we had done was nitrogen cycle, है ना? Okay. Any doubts from the last class? Who would want to draw the nitrogen cycle here? कोई आना चाहेगा? Now, देखो, couple of things again just to recap. We had started biogeochemical cycles. What is bio? What is geo? And what is chemical? Bio is living. Geo is the crust, rocks, everything is related to geo, right? And chemical, which means the chemical interactions because of this, right? That is the meaning of biogeochemical cycles, right? Okay. Now, we had seen what are the two types of cycles. One is perfect, one is imperfect. जहाँ पे perfect, imperfect लिखा है, you can also write pure as well as impure. Okay, that is also a similar classification. Perfect or pure cycles are the ones where, let's say, the nutrient is created, it is consumed, created, consumed immediately. There is no residue, right? Whereas the imperfect or the impure cycles are the nutrient is created, but they are stored as sediments for years and years. Because now we're going to do sedimentary cycles also, right? So what is the main difference here? So gaseous cycles are pure. These are perfect cycles. Why perfect or pure? Because the moment nutrient is created, it is consumed. It is not stored for a very long time. Whereas today we'll see, let's say, cycles like phosphorus cycle. In phosphorus cycle, the moment a nutrient is created, it may be stored in rocks for a very long time. Okay, so that is why it is impure, it is imperfect. Okay, so we have two types of cycles now. Talking of the gaseous cycles, we've seen three cycles. One is water, one is carbon, and one is nitrogen. Okay, water cycle में just we know one thing we see was water vapor. We saw certain processes like evaporation होता है, condensation होता है, precipitation होता है, right? All these factors we saw. What did you learn about water vapor yesterday? Right? It demonstrates greenhouse effect. Natural या man-made? बताओ. Natural. So should I be concerned about water vapor? If it is demonstrating natural greenhouse effect, should I be concerned? Not really. The reason is, why should I not be concerned? Because it is natural. It had been existing for a various amount of time. So while precipitation or evaporation, the basic greenhouse effect, and that is the natural component of it, okay, was there. I should be concerned about the man-made greenhouse effect. In that, the biggest contributor was carbon dioxide. याद आ रहा है? ठीक है? So when I'm talking of carbon dioxide, right, and we had also seen, just try to recall the greenhouse effect. There was incoming radiation. That was short wave या long wave? Short wave. Example क्या है? नहीं, insulation is fine, but what is the example of incoming radiation? UV rays, ultraviolet. Okay, are they high in energy or low in energy? High in energy, right? This also we understand. Now, after hitting the Earth's surface, after warming the surface, they also reflect back. Of course, they change their form. They become the outgoing terrestrial radiation. Now, outgoing radiation, is it short wavelength, long wavelength? Long wavelength. Example क्या है उसका? Infrared. Is it able to go out to the outer space, or it is getting trapped? It is trapped by a blanket of gases. That blanket of gases are your greenhouse gases. That blanket predominantly includes carbon dioxide. This also we saw. Now, naturally in the atmosphere, how much carbon dioxide is there? 0.03 to 0.04%. Okay. But now, also we discussed something known as Keeling curve. What is Keeling curve? Last में. सिर्फ बताना है what is. So anybody online, what is Keeling curve, and what is so special about it? How does Keeling curve get its reading? From which observatory? Hawaii is Mauna Loa, right? Mauna Loa Observatory, Hawaii. But then what is Keeling curve? X axis पे क्या है? Y axis पे क्या है? You want to try? चलो एक्स पे क्या है, वाई पे आपने देख लिया ग्राफ, हाँ बताओ। गलत। अगर मैं गलत बोलूंगा तो फिर आप फिर चेंज करोगे आंसर। चलो आप ट्राई करो। चलो यू ट्राई। ठीक है, तो कहते सर यही तो मैं बोल रहा था, तो इसलिए इफ आई क्रॉस क्वेश्चन यू डोंट चेंज योर आंसर। हाँ ठीक है। तो कीलिंग कर्व इन वेरी सिंपल टर्म्स टेल्स यू द levels of carbon dioxide over a period of time. As simple as that. Levels of carbon dioxide over a period of time. How do I know the levels of carbon dioxide? Through ppm parts per million. I get this data from Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. Yes, and over a period of time. Now, three facts to just keep in your mind. पहला fact क्या है? That around या before industrial revolution, what was the ppm? नहीं, around हाँ 270 to 80 के आसपास का, ठीक है? Then what is the safe level? 350 is of safe level. What is the level right now? 425. Okay, and this 425 level is very alarming. This figure you can use across your GS1 answer also, GS3 answers also. Whenever you have to introduce that climate change is increasing, it is alarming, it is dangerous, it is man-made, use that according to IPCC's report. We've also written that, है ना? IPCC's both CO2 levels have surpassed 400, or you can right now they are even 425 ppm. ठीक है? Okay, good point, Alicia. Graph tracking the rising CO2. Okay, fair point. Okay, that was there with CO2. And CO2, may just try to recall what were the reservoir of CO2. Conceptually, very important points. Okay, but start with atmosphere is one. You also have oceans. You also have through the terrestrial parts, fossil fuel, etc. All these are reservoirs, right? And we'd also seen certain processes related to this. Yes or no? कुछ process देखे थे हमने, combustion देखा था हमने. Okay, we have seen atmosphere ocean exchange. That was a very important point. Many people still are not aware that we think, okay, it is there in the atmosphere, but even ocean will keep on absorbing CO2, right? And with CO2, you have known terms like carbon sink. In coming classes, I'll tell you terms like carbon sequestration, CCS, carbon capture and storage. आगे देखेंगे, ठीक है? Then we've moved to nitrogen cycle, ठीक है? Nitrogen cycle में you have to again remember what is nitrogen fixation. It happens in three ways. बताओ जल्दी से. Microorganisms, second industrial process, third thunder and lightning. ठीक है? Now each one will tell me at least name of one microorganism during nitrogen fixation. We start with you. You'll tell me about symbiotic. चलो अब आप आओ. You have to tell free living and that too one example of aerobic. ठीक है? Okay. Another example of free living and aerobic. चलो बीच में क्या Benjamin. Okay, whatever is there. ठीक है. Next is example of aerobic, but this is sorry anaerobic, but this is free living. So starts with C. Clostridium, and one is rhodospirillum, right? Can nitrogen fixation happen on oceans? बताओ कैसे? Who will do this? Up. Good. Cyanobacteria is right. Another is BGA, blue-green algae. For that, we have seen three examples: Nostoc, Anabina, Spirulina. ठीक है? अब आते हैं कुछ processes पे. Then there is a process known as nitrification. Nitrification में what happens? The ammonia that is converted to nitrite first and then into nitrates. Now, if it is to convert into nitrite, which microorganism is there? And nitrococcus, nitrosomonas nitrococcus. The more you hear, याद हो जाएगा आपका, ठीक है? Second is from nitrite to nitrate. It is nitrobacter. Now you have nitrates. Nitrates gets assimilated into plants. They can use it. The plants can shed their leaves, litter that can get decomposed. There's a process known as ammonification. And then there is a process that is denitrification. Okay? In denitrification, what do I use? Pseudomonas and a thiobacillus. Now, what you can again think, thoda sa, just going by the words, pseudo. What is pseudo? Pseudo science. Pseudo is false. Yes or no? Pseudo suna hai aapne? Pseudo, and then they'll write any ideology with pseudo, right? So pseudo means false. and pseudo means, just the opposite in that sense. Maybe this is just for our when we're breaking down the words. Pseudo se yaad kar sakte ho, this is for denitrification. It is doing the opposite of nitrification, right? So pseudomonas may be a word play, but thiobacillus pe to bahut mushkil hai, because thiobacillus, with thio you may think of theobroma, or you may think of something lactobacillus. So that you have to remember. Okay, that is one. Now, before I move to the next one, just you can draw this. We've already covered it, but this is again a different way to present it. Uske baad I'll move to the other part. Symbiotic association will have a bacteria, will have legumes. So which is the legume, which is the bacteria we are talking about? ये तो पता होगा सबको. This everybody should know. Rhizobium. And other examples we've seen, but still you can write it: alfalfa, clover, pea, lentils, garden pea, broad pea, etc., etc. We have written this even in more detail. We have seen the fodder plants, we've seen the crops, and we've also seen trees. The kind of questions that they can ask you, we've tried to give. I have to give you a good idea. I'll move this side. So I'll just read out: alfalfa, sweet clover, sweet pea, lentils, garden pea, beans, and again clover beans. Broadly, just remember the main name. जैसे clover है, clover पे you will have variations. Okay, it can be sweet clover, this that. Same pea. Pea पे भी variations है: sweet pea, chickpea, garden pea. Let's say chickpea was not mentioned. What is chickpea? What are the two main characteristics of legumes that we saw yesterday? That is nitrogen fixation. Second is pod formation. Okay. Okay. Now, if you've understood the entire part of nitrogen cycle, there's one homework I'll give you, but just I'll explain this to you in very short. You have to just read about and maybe leave half a page in your notes for this. This is the new buzzword. A lot of the people, a lot of startups are exploring aquaponics. And now, in 1 minute, you'll understand why this is happening. Now, this word is made of two terms: hydroponics and aquaculture. Now, what happens in hydroponics? Hydroponics is known as soil-less agriculture. Without soil, you are growing the plants. Has anybody heard about this term? या कोई सोच सकता है ऐसा भी होगा? Can plants grow without soil? Can this happen? बताओ, सोचो. Just basic level पे. Normally, you would not believe this. Yes or no? Right? But this is happening. How this is happening, right, is because, and by the way, aquaculture is again related to fishes, etc. You are growing them. Now you are combining both of them. Combining se ban raha hai aquaponics. Now what happens in one simple essence you have to understand, right? Now, let's say this is a water container. I have a specific plant, right? The plant has water and it is only growing in water. Now, how many of you have seen an aquarium? Aquarium देखा है, fishes होते हैं. Now, in that, the water, can it be stored indefinitely or the water has to be changed consistently? Why? नहीं, simple or simple, बिल्कुल. It gets dirty. Why does it get dirty? Waste of the fishes, right? The waste of the fishes would be rich in uric acid, urea, yes or no? So what I'm saying is, as there will be fish waste. Now, what if somebody is aware that there is a fish waste and they use certain bacterias? I'll ask you bacteria later on. Now we know the urea or uric acid ultimately, or ammonia. If I have ammonia with me, the waste is rich in ammonia, by the way. Can ammonia be converted to nitrite? Can ammonia be converted to nitrate? हो सकता है. So I have used a bacteria. You know which will be this? This will be a nitrifying bacteria. Yes or no? So I finally get nitrate. Now, even when soil was there, from fertilizers, what did I need? Nitrate. So मैंने ये भी निकाल लिया अलग से. I've used a bacteria. And via mechanism, I'm feeding this directly. And this is exactly being done. Even without the use of soil, right? I've extracted out the certain nitrates and I'm giving this nitrates. Periodically, I'm also cleaning this water, right? This is exactly happening in aquaponics. So this is known as soil-less agriculture. You don't need soil for it, which means you can do it vertically also, in less space also, in buildings also. The two processes have been combined here. One is hydroponics, one is aquaponics. This process people understand only when they've understood what is nitrogen cycle and how it works. No, majorly the see plants here, of course, you can manage sunlight, right? Second, they need water, but nutrients ke form mein, the main nitrates that they need are supplied by this. Right? Now, if you've understood this, I'll just show you a couple of images of how all of this is working. And this is the new area. In 2023, this was also asked by UPSC, but in a very simple format. So now you also get to know that the examiner is also not interested only in the theoretical part of the cycle, but also in its working. अब ये देखो, जैसे कि एग्जाम्पल देखते हैं, aquaponics. Now this should be clear. देखो, there's water. These are plants. Fine. The filtration, etc., is going on, and then there are fishes. ठीक? The waste is there, for example. सबसे important चीज है यहाँ पे, there is a biofilter. Can you see a biofilter? In a biofilter, you will have the bacteria through which all the waste, etc., goes there, and the nitrates can be fed. Can you see this? So they are also controlling air pump. There's a water pump, and finally this part is there. So इससे फायदा क्या है? You can also rear the fishes. At the same time, you can also have your plants growth. And main thing is having a proper biofilter, having the knowledge of which bacteria has to be used, proper culture being created. So if you're able to manage this, this is how the soilless agriculture, both. This is hydroponics and this is aquaponics. Sorry, aquaculture. Both of these combined is aquaponics. This is being done. But if you were to see it directly, then this will not make sense. कि करा कैसे होगा? Now, can you tell me which bacteria would have been used? Or bacterias, I should say. Yeah, nitrosomes or nitrococcus for conversion of ammonia into nitrites, and then nitrobacter to for having it into nitrates. This can be used, right? If you do not use that, after some point even the fishes will die because the water will get toxic over a period of time. That is why this both things can be used. This is an example of aquaponics. Okay, what you can do, either leave a page, draw a diagram like this in your notes. Okay, It does not have to be this refined, but main thing I want you to focus on is this biofilter. Ultimately, so एक basic set tank ऐसा बना सकते हो, showing the plant, also one showing the fish. Make a couple of connections, but don't miss out on the biofilter. Okay? You can take simply 30 seconds, बहुत simple सा ऐसा कुछ बनाओ, but ensure you have this. So this is a more applied part. People online, is the image visible for you? Biofilter pe, if it is very light, okay, so this is actually biofilter is written. I'll write it separately. Okay, done? अच्छा ठीक है, okay. Now let's move to the next range. We now go to so we were seeing this bio. We've, we have had a look at the gaseous cycles. Now let's move to sedimentary cycles. The first one we'll see is sulfur. And with sulfur, I've already asked you to put a star mark, right? After that, we'll also see phosphorus. Why is there a star mark on sulfur? Yes, it can be both. Right? So sulfur cycle may just no sulfur. Think of examples like think of yes. So it will have it does have a predominant gaseous form also, but it is also there as sediment. Which one? It is actually having both the components. In normal books, you'll find only the mention of sulfur in sedimentary cycles. But in the recent times, etc., because of burning of fossil fuels, plus even in deep hydrothermal vents, there is a release of H2S. So in that, it will be very difficult to quantify how much percentage is there in what. Okay, but we have to know that it is having both. I will not be able to quantify directly. Hmm? Huh. Yeah. Because even for SO2, the level of emissions, etc., all of that is rising. So conventional understanding of SO2 again has to be modified. Okay. Now this is sulfur. So let's first have a look at the image of what is happening in the sulfur cycle. Okay, and then we will understand the reservoir, etc. Now, this is your sulfur cycle, fine. First, let's see from where the sulfur is getting emitted. Okay, one by one. Now, the sulfides, yeah, iron sulfides are there as sediment. This should not be a surprise because we've already mentioned this is a sedimentary cycle. You'll find this as sediments, no issues. Yes. Second, sulfur is also there in fossil fuels, which means when the mining, etc., happens, some sulfur can be released. Other than that, if you burn the fossil fuels will also have some traces, some amount of sulfur. If you burn it, it will be released as sulfur dioxide. Now, volcano. In the eruptions of volcano, even H2S will be released, hydrogen sulfide. The volcanoes can be above the ground. Can volcanoes be below the ground or below the land? So they can be underwater volcanoes also. They can also release hydrogen sulfide, H2S. Fine. Now, the moment this becomes airborne, so ये क्या हो जाएगा? This will be present in atmosphere. Now, if there is going to be rain, this can get There can be a chemical interaction where this interacts with water. This is known as wet deposition. But if it just drops like a normal sulfate, it is simply dry deposition. Nothing much would have changed. Now, when this falls down, sulfates can also be present in the soil. So soil to हमें समझ में आ रहा है. It can be present in soil. It can be present via rocks or sediments. It can be present due to mining, right? Or in fossil fuels. This is one. However, something very interesting also happens. How many of you know about phytoplanktons? Right? Phytoplanktons also release something known as, अभी इसको लिखेंगे भी, DMS, dimethyl sulfide. Sulfide है इसमें, dimethyl sulfide. So even some traces are also released via phytoplanktons through the process. And one thing very interesting is this DMS, dimethyl sulfide, is helpful in the formation of clouds. Right? So phytoplankton release what? DMS, and DMS helps in formation of clouds. Now, imagine if there is more and more temperature increase, more and more climate change, what is going to happen? Would there be more phytoplanktons or less phytoplanktons? If there is ocean acidification, there will be less. If there are less phytoplanktons, would there be less DMS produced? Less. Will there be more cloud formation, less cloud formation? Less cloud formation. अब आप मुझे बताओ, if there is a sun, the temperature is already hot, right? Clouds can help in reflecting the sunlight, incoming sunlight. Yes, that term is known as albedo. In future classes, I'll again repeat this term many a times. Albedo means the reflection. So we've seen two cases. PP here is phytoplankton. They, let's say, release DMS, and DMS leads to formation of clouds. But in the context of climate change, global warming, what is happening? The phytoplanktons are reduced in number, which means DMS is reduced, which means I have less clouds. Let's say यहाँ पे इतने clouds हैं, यहाँ पे इतने कम हैं. Now, sun is there in both the cases. Now, if cloud cover is high, that means incoming sunlight can also get reflected. This is known as albedo. Now, most of you know this term, but you may not know what is this. Now, you tell me, if there is, let's say, very hot summer day, is it better to wear a white shirt or a black shirt? Why white? Because you are racist. No. Yes, it is related to absorption. Black would absorb more heat. Yes or no? So that is why. Now, if I talk about snow, snow is totally white. Snow has high albedo or low albedo. Albedo means reflectivity. Snow has high albedo. जो भी snow पे light आएगी, it will reflect it. And second, black surfaces, they have high albedo, low albedo. They have low albedo, which means they have very low reflectivity. Anything which is coming to them, they will absorb it. Now, if there are more clouds, at least part of this gets reflected. So which means the water body, it will get less warm. Yes. And now if there are lesser clouds, what will happen? Most of the sunlight is going to come. It means ocean water ko kya hoga? This will be warmer. Yes or no? So this is going to reinforce. So climate change or global warming is going to reinforce itself. Right? Because of global warming, climate change, you had less phytoplanktons, less cloud cover, more heat coming, and again lesser phytoplanktons. So एक cycle बन जाएगी यहाँ पे. This is again I wanted to tell you. So this connection of sulfur cycle and phytoplankton is also there, right? Because they release DMS, which again has sulfides. This is dimethyl sulfide. उससे हम याद रखेंगे cloud cover. उससे एक और concept जुड़ा है albedo का. Okay, इसको भी लिखेंगे अलग से. But just remember this. And this is again some of the less understood or maybe less discussed components of sulfur cycle. Yes. Right. No, but see, DMS will give you the give condensation nuclei. Okay. And that helps in formation of clouds. Right, right. In outgoing radiation, there are two things. One is it is dependent on the altitude also. So you have low clouds and you have high clouds. One type of cloud is going to help you reflect and one is going to absorb, right? We are talking of this in a very simplistic sense, Abhi, right? High clouds and low clouds, you'll also understand this more in more detail in geography, right? The high clouds किस level पे, and this question has also been asked once. Okay, so again, just for बाकी class के लिए, they clouds, when I say, there's also distinction in clouds. There are high clouds and there are low clouds. Certain clouds will be very helpful in absorbing the let's say outgoing radiation, but many clouds will be helpful in reflecting the incoming radiation. Okay, if that is the case, in when I do chalo climate change, I'll also tell you this distinction alag se, right? Because that is better understood when you again go for a more detailed understanding of greenhouse effect. Okay, that is one. Abhi ke liye what we'll see, that they help in the formation of clouds, they help in condensation nuclei, and because of that, what would happen? The warming, if the lesser clouds are present, what would happen? Simple case, a warming of oceans will happen. Higher reflectivity. Okay, that is one. Now, till here you are able to follow, very basic. To write this heading sulfur cycle, couple of points we'll write for sulfur cycle. The first point is reservoir only, and uske baad we'll see some of the processes. Okay, so you can write sulfur is stored in Earth's crust. The very first point is it is crust. Sulfur is stored in Earth's crust in form of minerals, in form of minerals in Earth's crust, in form of minerals like pyrites, not pyrates. Bracket we can write FeS2 and gypsum, pyrites and gypsum. Gypsum is CaSO4.2H2O. Nobody's going to ask you the chemical form, but abhi ke liye, because it is SO, sulfur is present here. CaSO4.2H2O. This is gypsum. The first point we've written is, in reservoir, it is present in Earth's crust, right? Next, we can write atmosphere. Atmosphere contains sulfur gases like H2S. What is H2S? Hydrogen sulfide, comma SO2, sulfur dioxide. H2S, comma SO2 and DMS. DMS is dimethyl sulfide. There is also another DMS outside. What is that? Delhi Metro B, milk scheme B, etc. Okay, so we are talking of dimethyl sulfide. H2S, SO2 and DMS. Then write large reservoirs of oceans contain large reservoirs of sulfates. ये आप देखोगे sulfates in water है. Oceans contain large reservoir of sulfates and DMS and dimethyl sulfide. Now you can write a short note on DMS. लिखो DMS. This is within this only. Simple points है. First लिखो this is produced by DMS में this is produced by marine phytoplanktons. Marine phytoplanktons. चलो. Give me 4 examples of phytoplanktons that we've done in the class, one by one. With आपसे शुरू करेंगे. Cyanobacteria. चलो फिर पीछे. अच्छा ओके, आप कोई डायटम्स, तो सब सबसे टफ वाले मेरे पे पड़ते हैं. The easy ones are already covered. चलो try करो. Dino, चलो dino में बच जाओगे आप. Dino is correct. Dinoflagellates. And one is coccolithophores. ठीक है. Okay, so they are produced by marine phytoplanktons. Next, देखो DMS contributes to cloud formation. DMS contributes to cloud formation by forming aerosol, AEROSOL, by forming aerosol aerosol, which plays a significant role, which plays a significant role in affecting the climate, which plays a significant role in affecting the climate. Now, because I've mentioned cloud, so cloud may just लिख लो because we discussed this concept and you should know it later on. Margins में लिखोगे difference between low clouds and high clouds. In geography, this should be covered, but at least I'll also discuss it in climate change additionally. Difference between low clouds and high clouds with respect to climate regulation. Okay. Next, also write down last लिखो एक volcanoes. You can write volcanoes release H2S. Volcanoes release H2S. That's it. Now come to processes in sulfur cycle. Processes in sulfur cycle, right? Some terms, etc. we'll see one by one. The easiest process to understand is weathering. ये दिख रहा है आपको weathering? What is the meaning of weathering here? Is it related to weather? What is weathering? चलो good, ठीक है, okay. ठीक है, it's a breakdown. And why would weathering happen? Like, ठीक है. So it can be physical, it can be chemical, etc. Weathering is there. So right, weathering में sulfur is released from rocks. Sulfur is released from rocks. Rocks and minerals into soil through weathering. From rocks, no, sulfur is released from rocks and minerals into the soil through weathering. Into the soil through weathering. Second is absorption. Name is very easy to understand. Absorption. So right, plant absorb sulfur as sulfates. Plant absorb sulfur as sulfates. Up third is interesting. Maybe you've not heard about this. While it is not a process, but again, it's a part. Hydrothermal vents. Normally, what is a vent? Passage for at least the movement of air, etc. Now, hydrothermal vents, for example, will be found. Let's say this is an ocean. Deep into the ocean, you will find a hydrothermal vent. So, in very difficult terrains, okay, normally which are not inhabited by man, I'll find something like a hydrothermal vent. Now, hydrothermal vent, of course, also release H2S. Remember, in I think couple of classes before, I told you a term known as chemosynthesis. Normally, what happens is photosynthesis, where light is present. But light is, let's say, present only in the top layers of ocean body. What about very deep down inside? So here you can also have certain hydrothermal vents which release certain H2S. Okay, this can be used by organisms, break it down into sulfur, and that is also how they get the nutrients. Yes. So in the hydrothermal vents, first of all, because the temperatures are going to be different, very limited oxygen is present, very limited light is present. So organism जो आपको यहाँ मिलेंगे, they will be different from the regular organisms, more specialized in nature. Yes or no? So write down hydrothermal vents, and I'll give you this also as a homework, that find which types of organisms are usually found here. Because conventionally, because this will have, if they release a lot of, let's say, hot gases, so those organisms should be able to survive those hot gases. They are the ones that will be found here. So these, you will of course find chemoautotrophs, okay? Those who are able to use some of the sulfur and then they're able to regulate it. So right, hydrothermal vents, right? These are unique reservoirs. These are unique reservoirs where sulfur compounds, where sulfur compounds, particularly H2S, particularly H2S, is emitted from volcanic, it is emitted from volcanic activity on the ocean floor. Volcanic activity from, yeah, on the ocean floor. And इसी के margins में also just write, this is your homework, organisms found in these areas. दो तीन एग्जाम्पल लिखना आगे. When I talk to you about extreme organisms, again I'll reference this point. In the future classes, I'll tell you something known as extremophiles. Extremophiles are those organisms who can withstand extremes of temperature. They're found in one of the most difficult terrains. Okay? तो फिर से इसका reference होगा, तो just maybe a couple of examples you can write here. Okay. Fourth, you can write deposition and sedimentation. Deposition and sedimentation. So you can write here atmospheric sulfur compound. This is directly seen from the image also. देखो ये है deposition, and they are found as then as sediments. So deposition can be dry and wet also, and when they are submitted, these are found as sediments. So you can write sulfur compounds. These are deposited back to the Earth's surface, back to the Earth's surface via VIA, via dry or wet deposition. Via dry or wet deposition. Okay, and last again, this is a repetition, right? Atmospheric components. Atmospheric components. Dash करके you can write volcanic activity and fossil fuel combustion. All of this ultimately releases and fossil fuel combustion. Okay. राइट अब इस इमेज में देयर इज वन मोर टर्म दैट इज रिटन एज को डीएमएस है डीएमएस dimethyl sulfide it is there these two you know SO2 and H2SO4 see DMS पे जो सल्फर कंपाउंड्स हैं they can react with oxygen to make SO2 they can react further with water to make H2SO4 but one more thing is MSA तो just write it ऐसे करके बनाना phytoplanktons you write then write DMS and write SO2 MSA H2SO4 this is just an addition maybe because see this is going to be the most difficult part of the cycle because this has normally not been asked but if let's say they go into more details of marine surface cycle etc they may still be interested and uske baad maybe two lines will write on what is MSA so DMS which ultimately would help in SO2 MSA and H2SO4 okay so write MSA equal to लिखो methane sulfonic acid MSA is methane sulfonic acid second point है it is formed through oxidation of DMS oxidation of DMS especially in cloud droplets especially in cloud droplets and aerosols cloud droplets and aerosols right then you can write it is highly water soluble highly water soluble and removed from the atmosphere so the moment it is created right it is removed from that atmosphere within a week within 1 week or less it is removed how would it be removed simply dry या wet deposition हवा में होगा फिर वो deposit कर जाएगा right so it does not stay permanently in the atmosphere because things are getting oxidation हो रहा है SO2 is there SO2 can also be deposited later on yes or no because ultimately it's a cycle things will not stay forever whatever goes maybe back in the atmosphere whatever is in the atmosphere will also come back via deposition MSA का just नाम you should know okay what are aerosols any idea we've written aerosols in two places correct any practical example of aerosol that you can give me hmm? Dust can also be one dust will have suspended particles or kuch how many of you have seen those basic air purifiers etc right uspe bhi they also emit certain particles and when I say air the ones which will have which let's say improve the fragrance yes or no so they also have certain particles they will release for example so basic kya hai they can have solid particles also or liquid particles which are suspended okay so for example there's whole column of air उसमें कुछ small water particles हैं this can also be aerosol whereas if you even have small solid particles which are present for example when I see dust में क्या क्या होता है there is a column of air but there are also small impurities also right so that becomes a aerosol right so एक छोटा सा note लिखो aerosol पे you should know the definition aerosol you will see every time when you see pollution air pollution specifically there's a lot of talk about what is an aerosol how to manage it etc so you should be knowing what is an aerosol okay so you can write they're tiny solid or liquid particles suspended in the air? Tiny, solid, or liquid particles suspended in the air? Second point, they can be natural. Natural. In natural, write the example. Salt, sorry, not salt, write sea salt. They can be natural like sea salt, comma, dust. We spoke about dust, comma, volcanic ash, volcanic ash, pollen, pollen, comma, pollen. You know pollen grains, right? Pollen, pollen. Okay. Now, बहुत बार क्या होता है? Let's say in some urban spaces where you have, let's say, too much of greenery. Okay. Why is it difficult to breathe? Or why respiratory issues are there? Even because of pollens. If there are too many pollens in the air, people will find it difficult to breathe. The same example of pollens being an issue we've discussed in invasive species also. The Russian poplar that was there in Jammu and Kashmir, its pollen became airborne. People could not breathe very easily because of this. It caused respiratory issues. Right? So pollen can be one example, and all this example is in natural. Then right, man-made. Man-made. So this, of course, one is smoke, comma, soot, SOOT, soot. Okay. इस पे लिखो black bracket में black carbon. See, if I'm burning a fossil fuel or any hydrocarbon, if there is a complete combustion, then there will be carbon dioxide released. But if there is incomplete combustion, this will be black carbon. जैसे आपने normal आप सोचो, when we burn a log of wood, there are some parts which are not completely burnt. Okay, a lot of them will also release ultimately because of incomplete combustion. So you will have some small soot particles. उनका size क्या हो सकता है? बहुत छोटा हो सकता है. Even in small, let's say very small particles, they can be very harmful to the breathing. They can be harmful in general in indoor air also, right? In fact, indoor air pollution सुना है हमने? What are the sources of indoor air pollution? Just सोचो, apart from smoking and etc. नाम सुना है हमने? Normally when you think, if you go outside, you think अरे outside बेकार है. The air is polluted. What are the sources of indoor air pollution? चलो ठीक है, fair. और सोचो. But how is it coming? वो बताओ. Hmm? Cooking steam. अच्छा. Okay. Anything else? Not a very prominent source, but depends on what are you cooking. हाँ. घर में या मतलब if you are inside a home, what are the sources of pollution? Okay. Not direct. और सोचो. चलो मेरा vent बाहर लगा है. चलो AC का. The unit is outside. I want other people to feel the heat. अब बताओ. Inside normally just from fear from observation. Can incense sticks be one? और कुछ? और कुछ सोचो. What about paints? Paints का क्यों नहीं दिमाग में आ रहा किसी को? Paints can be a big source. What about carpets? Carpets are also source of indoor air pollution. Now, for example, you would have seen this, या तो सुना होगा किसी से, if you go to some place, अपने घर जा रहे हो, एक महीने बाद, everything was locked. It is always advisable when you open the gate, थोड़ा सा हट जाओ. Why? Gases like radon, they will be released. Second issue, one of the big source of indoor air pollution is poor ventilation. Right? If there is very good ventilation, all these gases are easily removed outside. So even the paints can be a source, because slow, you are not able to see, but there will be certain emissions. Your carpets, many of these things contribute to indoor air pollution. Okay? And I discussed this because the biggest contributor, or one of the biggest contributor to indoor air pollution is black carbon, which is nothing but soot. And soot is a aerosol. So connection. That is what you have to know. ठीक है? Margins पे कहीं पे लिख लो, बाद में पढ़ेंगे हम आगे. In pollution, we'll read indoor air pollution, but just be aware, And now, when you go to your home, just see what are the sources which can be possible sources of indoor air pollution. ठीक है, okay? So this you need to know. Aerosols में what is man-made, just for your reference, and what is natural. Okay. Then just also write significance of sulfur cycle. Okay, three basic points we'll write. Number one, write critical components of amino acids. It's a critical component of amino acids and proteins. It's a critical component of amino acids and proteins. Next, it plays a vital role. It plays a vital role in the synthesis of vitamins. In the synthesis of vitamins. Third, it plays a role in climate regulation. अब मुझे बताओ ये कैसे होता है? How can it regulate climate? DMS. What is the full form of DMS? सही है, बिल्कुल सही है. Di methyl sulfide. It plays a role in regulation of climate. Yeah, climate regulation. Bracket में लिखो DMS. Then you'll remember what is DMS. And last is soil fertility. Soil fertility, and right, sulfates are important for plant growth. Sulfates are important for plant growth. Now the last heading in sulfur cycle. Now bring in the human impact. So how we are doing the cycles is a unique way, right? Why is it unique? I'm also telling you the static component. We are linking with some facts and then linking the human impact in every cycle. Okay, otherwise these things are very scattered when you read them. Okay, and normally when even in books when you read sulfur cycle, आपको बहुत limited information मिलेगी, right? And significance and again the human impact that is also not there. So then you don't understand fully what is the cycle, right? Now, in sulfur cycle, the last heading is we're talking of the most dangerous species, yes or no? Human impact on sulfur cycle. Anything that you can guess? How can humans impact sulfur cycle? How come? But that is not related to this. That is related to phosphorus. रिवर का फोटो दिखाया था, कौन सी रिवर है? यमुना. It was Yamuna. यमुना यहाँ से कितनी दूर है? It is only very close. And you would have heard of recent times of Yamuna getting flooded. Abhi just few months later, abhi फिर से you will see the live images of again the froth in Yamuna. The reason is people use high amount of what should I say? This detergents. Detergents are rich in phosphorus because of that, but that process is known as eutrophication. ठीक है, वो अलग है. Eutrophication happens because of two things. One is nitrogen, one is phosphorus. इसके बाद वाली cycle is phosphorus. Right? Sulfur के लिए human impact, the most obvious point you have to remember. So fossil fuel, I'll take it up, but acid rain. Many times out of emotions, okay, or purely out of the feel of it, people like to move in rains, they have to dance in rains. Many times unaware that the rain may itself be acid rain, okay. What is acid rain? Basically, the pH is less or more. It will be lesser, right? So normally the pH of water, that is at least in the rain, it is nearly 5, 5.5. Here it can go even 4.5 or even 4. That is why it is very dangerous in acid rain. Acid rain में दो main चीजें हैं, components. One is, right? So oxides of sulfur becoming H2SO4, oxides of nitrogen becoming, right? These are the two things that you have to know. Acha, just add in your nitrogen cycle notes, if you've not written human, जो last वाला paragraph है, in the human impact, also mention acid rain if you've not written it. Human impact में देखो, अगर हमने लिखा है कहीं पे acid rain, नहीं लिखा है तो लास्ट पे acid rain का point add करो. And write just HNO3, you'll remember. Acid rain is a separate topic we'll do in pollution. Okay? In acid rain, please write in the sulfur cycle. देखो SO2 and nitrogen oxides combine with water vapor to form sulfuric acid and nitric acid. Combine with water vapor to form sulfuric acid and nitric acid, causing acid rain, and nitric acid causing acid rain. इसका mini point लिखो, with point under acid rain. It lowers the pH of soil. Underline lowers. It lowers the pH of soil. इसी में supporting point is it harms plants and aquatic life. It harms plants and aquatic life. So one big consequence of sulfur cycle, negative impact, is acid rain. Second, right, combustion of fossil fuels. We're talking of the human impact. So combustion of fossil fuels increases SO2, contributing to air pollution and acid rain. Air pollution and acid rain. And now you also know term like wet deposition. So ultimately wet deposition is your acid rain, right? It's causing air pollution and acid rain. Air pollution and acid rain. इसीलिए cycles में सब जुड़े हैं concepts. Even pollution is a linked topic, right? Third is, I'll mention this related to oceans and we'll write about, right? Changes in ocean productivity affects the production of DMS, which influences cloud cover, and climate regulation. ठीक है? Till here, are we able to follow? This is all we have to do for sulfur cycle. And now you see a format for every cycle, right? We see a reservoir, we see process, we see significance, and we see human impact. You prepare in this manner. And this has all the possible interlinkages. This also covers your agriculture part, okay? So when you later on read it, then for the further topics, they will also make a lot of sense to you. अभी मैं फिर से आऊंगा. When I talk to you about pollution, I'll go into more detail about sulfur, nitrogen, etc. Then you have already covered some of the aspects. तो आपको लगेगा अच्छा एसिड रेन तो हम पढ़ चुके हैं, हमें थोड़ा तो आइडिया है एसिड रेन का. Then it will be easier for you to follow. Okay. Now let's move to the next cycle. Another important cycle, right? Phosphorus cycle. And just look at the image for a moment. In this, what stands out to you? इस image में सबसे अलग चीज क्या दिख रही है आपको? Rocks, right? In fact, the maximum space the rocks have taken, which also tells you that this is a proper sedimentary cycle. If the rocks are weathering down, this ultimately weathering of rocks release phosphates. Phosphates can be present in soil and they can also go to water. And phytoplanktons के लिए phosphates are just like their fast food. We eat the fast food very fast. What happens because of this? That can lead to obesity. So in that sense, phosphorus, जब plants have the phosphorus, they eat it very fast, they grow very fast. That leads to eutrophication. Right? तो ऐसे हम लिंक करेंगे आगे जाके. So that is the basic case of phosphorus cycle. So phosphorus cycle number 1 is what? Sedimentary cycle. First thing याद रखना है. Second thing, always remember the moment you see phosphorus, link it to eutrophication. What is eutrophication? Nutrient reduction, nutrient enrichment. It is the enrichment of nutrients. Like there are only two main nutrients. One is nitrogen, one is phosphorus. And with that, you will remember the example of Yamuna. Okay? There can be other examples. I gave you example of river Mississippi. Okay? So I'll tell you Indian examples also. I'll tell you global examples also in eutrophication, etc. Okay? Now, river Mississippi, is it found in Gulf of Kutch or Gulf of Khambat? बताओ, try करो. कुछ है कोई पॉइंट है रेफरेंस का? अच्छा नहीं है, फिर ठीक है. आप? अच्छा. हाँ. गल्फ मिसिसिपी रिवर इज इन गल्फ ऑफ कच्छ या गल्फ ऑफ खंबात? आप तो कहोगे सर मैं तो वहीं से हूँ, मुझे तो पता नहीं होगा वहां से. अच्छा, एनीबडी एल्स हु वांट्स टू ट्राई? वेयर वुड दिस बी? रिवर मिसिसिपी, बे ऑफ बंगाल या पाक बे? आप ट्राई करो. यूएस. यूएस इज यूनाइटेड. So this is actually the Gulf of Mexico. Mississippi River is Gulf of Mexico. And we discussed this in the context of dead zones. ठीक है, ऐसा लिख मत लेना कि Gulf of Kutch and Gulf of Khambat. ठीक है? Where is Gulf of Kutch? Which state? बताओ, आप तो बताओ. गुजरात. ठीक है. Okay. Fine. Okay. Phosphorus cycle is in that sense a small cycle. We'll write a couple of points about phosphorus cycle now. You can write it is a major component. Phosphorus cycle is a major component of nucleic acids and phospholipids. Nucleic acids and PHOS, phospholipids, which means lipids which have a base of phosphorus. Component of nucleic acids, phospholipids, and calcium phosphate. The second point is important. You have to know that phosphorus is a very important nutrient for water bodies. Right? That is why the moment it increases, the marine organisms also increase very fast. Right? So you will write phosphorus is a limiting nutrient. Phosphorus is the limiting nutrient, bracket में लिखो, necessary for growth in aquatic ecosystems. In aquatic ecosystems. So what did we write? Limiting nutrient, which means it is necessary for growth. But the moment it is more, it leads to eutrophication also. वो अब लिखेंगे इसके बाद थोड़ी देर में. Okay. Now, if you see the image, here it is easy to understand what is the main reservoir. एक reservoir क्या है? Main is rocks. Can soil also be one? Yes. And third is water bodies. So write reservoirs and write these three only. Very simple. In sulfur cycle, etc., you have hydrothermal vents. Okay, more complicated. This is very easy. तो रिजर्वायर में रॉक्स एंड मिनरल्स नंबर 1, जब लिखोगे उसमें लिखना ब्रैकेट करके मेन सोर्स. मेन सोर्स आर रॉक्स एंड मिनरल्स. Second is soil, and third is water bodies. Okay. Now we move to processes. Because this is sedimentary cycle, we have to talk about the most important point is weathering. Weathering of rocks. This we already understand. Weathering ho gaya pehla. Second, you'll write is absorption by plants. The plants can also absorb phosphorus. Absorption by plants. Third is consumption and assimilation. Consumption and assimilation. Fourth is decomposition. अब देखो, whenever I say decomposition, right? जैसे यहाँ पे देखो, there is a assimilation by plants, right? So plants do not just assimilate nitrates; they can also have phosphates. Fine. And when these plants, जिसमें already animal tissues, species, etc., which already has phosphorus, the moment it gets decomposed, वही चीज वापस आ जाएगी. So don't be surprised कि मैंने nitrates में सुना है, because there are so many nutrients available. Yes or no? So one point, so we've written is consumption and assimilation. Another point was decomposition. Even decomposition will release this. Yes. Next, right? Runoff into water bodies. Runoff into water bodies. Now, right? Excessive runoff. इसी point में लिखो. Excessive runoff. And now you know which term I'll introduce. Eutrophication. Excessive runoff, often due to human activities. Excessive runoff, often due to human activities, leads to eutrophication. Leads to eutrophication in aquatic ecosystems. It leads to eutrophication in aquatic ecosystems. Right? Eutrophication, please underline eutrophication. Remember that. Again, I'm asking you, what is the other name for eutrophication? Nutrient enrichment. And it happens because of two things. What are they? Nitrogen या phosphorus. अब nitrogen, of course, when you say nitrogen, it is not because of nitrogen. क्यों? It is because of nitrates. Yes or no? Nitrogen तो unreactive है atmosphere में, but predominantly it is the nitrates. Okay, fine. Then last point here is sedimentation. Okay. Up sedimentation, I want to ask you, is it a long-term process, formation of sediments, or a very short-term process? It's a long-term process, right? So slow and steady, the deposits happen. Take over time. There's a pressure that is put in. Then the sediments get formed, right? So इसके लिए we'll write in water bodies. In water bodies, phosphates settle down in the bottom. In water bodies, phosphates settle down in the bottom and form sediments. Then you can write over geological time. हाँ, इसी में over geological time, GEO, geological, because geology is related to rocks. Over geological time, these sediments may get uplifted to form rocks. rocks. Okay. Now let's come to the human impact. Hmm? Significance of this in the very first point we've also written that if it is there in nucleic acids etc. that is there. It is also important for plant growth. तो हमने introduction में दोनों points लिखे हैं. The importance and significance of phosphorus. Human impact में one thing तो is certain. First point has to be eutrophication. Okay, तो लिखो eutrophication में dash करके excessive. It is due to excessive runoff. It is due to excessive runoff into the water bodies, which causes algal blooms. Which causes algal blooms. Algal blooms and oxygen depletion. Algal blooms and oxygen depletion. I'll show you how an algal bloom would look like. Many of you would have seen it, but you may not know the name exactly. देखो extreme algal bloom. Kid caught. I think this looks more like AI generated, although. But this is Nat Geo, तो हो सकता है original भी हो. तो ये देखो बहुत ही common है इस तरह से. These are the algae that have grown, right? You say them as kai even. ये दिख रहे हैं? Now, I said this can lead to oxygen depletion. Why is that? Yeah, how is that? Oxygen कैसे कम होगी? And as I go, you'll see different types of toxic blooms, changing the colors of the lakes also. Growing epidemic of toxic algal blooms. Okay, USA also बहुत Great Lakes में issues हैं. Okay, we will see this also. I said, for example, toxic bloom invades Indian waters. Right? So one term is algal bloom, another term is HAB. When the algal blooms turns toxic or harmful, they are known as harmful algal blooms. This also means that not every algal bloom will be toxic or harmful. Okay, it is only to this extent when this goes. Okay, this becomes a problem. ठीक है. HABs अभी हम करेंगे when we do aquatic ecosystems. I'll tell you parts, yeah, locations in India where this is a challenge. That is the first major issue. Now the question I'd asked you, let's answer that. We had seen if let's say if there's an algal bloom, देखो अब algal bloom, why is it happening बताओ? Right, because of overload of nutrients. Nutrients are increasing, nitrogen and phosphorus, right? The moment these are increasing, what are these? These are food for algae. Yes or no? They will eat it. Again, they will rapidly multiply. Now, to understand this, you need to know a couple of terms I'll tell you. Let's say this is a water body, right? This water body will have dissolved oxygen. Okay? And in this water body, you'll have phytoplanktons, you'll have zooplanktons, there will be decomposers, fish, everything will be there. So there is a amount of dissolved oxygen. Okay? Let's say this as A. A is a time. Let's say on Tuesday of 12 p.m., it had 100 units of dissolved oxygen. Okay. Now, 5 days later, and what is happening for A? There is a huge nutrient enrichment in the nearby fields because of agriculture or because of, let's say, so one, you're getting nitrogen from the agricultural fields, and you're also getting phosphorus from detergents for washing of clothes, many things that are happening alongside. So nitrogen bhi बढ़ रहा है, phosphorus बढ़ रहा है यहाँ पे. What will happen? There will be huge growth of algae, very fast growth of algae. Fine. So in this, what would happen? आपका dissolved oxygen तो ये है. Now, the new growth of algae is going to be very rapid. They will also, because आप सोचो ना यहाँ पे whatever species were there, they have increased. These species want more oxygen. Plus the decomposer also want more oxygen because they have to consume the species. They also have to have their functioning going on. What will happen? 100 units over a time, will it increase or reduce? ये बताओ. बताओ. Any idea? Dissolved oxygen थी, right? In 5 days, algae rapidly multiply. Number of species have now increased, right? Decomposers need more oxygen. Everybody needs more oxygen. But over a period of time, what would happen? Oxygen has reduced. क्योंकि लोग बढ़ गए हैं, right? Let's say now the dissolved oxygen is somewhere around 50. It has reduced. Now every organism is under more stress. Over a period of time, this 50 can also become 30, 20. So algal bloom hui because of the growth of algae. The oxygen is getting depleted, right? If the oxygen is getting depleted, the demand for oxygen will increase or reduce? Increase. So दो चीजें अलग अलग है. One is actual availability of oxygen, that is known as dissolved oxygen, and another concept is known as BOD, biological oxygen demand. Now whenever money is short in supply, the demand of money is more or less? It is more. Same, if dissolved oxygen is reducing, the demand for oxygen will increase. This you can then also understand. If the lake is getting polluted because of more and more nitrogen and phosphorus, dissolved oxygen will slowly and steadily get reduce, and demand for oxygen will increase. This is also what happens in river Ganga. When river Ganga starts to get polluted, what will happen? Many organisms cannot perform their functions. Decomposer also want more and more, let's say, oxygen. If there's a growth of algae, algae has to be also decomposed. This requires oxygen. Over a period of time, dissolved oxygen will reduce. One issue. Second issue is when there's algal growth, the sunlight cannot percolate. It is getting stopped here only. Other organisms cannot get sunlight. They cannot perform their functions. So ecological productivity of the lake also goes down. Yes. So your dissolved oxygen is reducing. Over a period of time, your productivity also reduces. This is again referred to as, जो हमने बाद में देखा, they become dead zones when almost entire dissolved oxygen is wiped out. पूरी तरह से. This is what happens in eutrophication. Right? So eutrophication में only in the initial part you may think, अरे algae grow कर रहे तो अच्छी बात है. But the point is, if algae grow too much, other species do not grow. Oxygen is not there. Okay, productivity reduces. It creates more problems in the longer run. This is the challenge with eutrophication. थोड़ा सा समझ आ रहा है? So I've just told you concepts like there is concept known as DO, that is dissolved oxygen, and because of related to this is also one concept, that is biological oxygen demand. DO and BOD, and DO and BOD are inversely related. If I have high levels of dissolved oxygen, the demand will be very less. But if I have very limited dissolved oxygen, the demand of that will be very high. As simple as that. Right? So abhi bhi yahan pe, let's say whenever there are water shortages, right? And there are water shortages, right? So what happens? The demand for water is high. All of the people, they will increase the price of water. But if water is abundant, तो डिमांड अपने आप कम हो जाती है, प्राइस विल ऑल्सो कम डाउन, जस्ट एज अ सिंपल एग्जाम्पल. तो algal bloom is there. Now एक और चीज है, over a period of time this algal bloom may become toxic, and when it becomes toxic it releases certain toxins, then it can even cause death of other organisms. Normal एक algal bloom है which is also dangerous, but when it actually releases toxins then it is known as harmful algal bloom. So there will be many articles that you will read, HABs, harmful algal blooms are increasing, and in HABs also same issues is there. Ultimately it will lead to formation of dead zone until and unless you intervene. आप इंटरवीन कैसे कर सकते हो? आप कोशिश करो एल्गी इन सबको हटाओ, so that sunlight can come in, right? But that is also a costly process. It's not very easy. And what if the entire lake is spread? You may have to then think of a chemical way to do that. No, so mechanical way may not be very useful in that sense. So these are practical problems. Let's say even if you are put in, आप भी सोचो आप इसको solve कैसे करोगे? This will be not very easy to, let's say, treat. And treatment requires money in this case, let's say. This is, let's say, very common example. Entire lake. अब इसको पूरा हटाना पड़ेगा. And especially because of this, many species would have also died. Right? अब यहाँ पे क्या है? Cyanobacteria, BGA, blooming on Lake Erie, US. You should not be surprised. Cyanobacteria is what? Phytoplankton only. मैंने क्या बोला? Phytoplanktons, algae are blooming. This is nothing but a BGA. And over, so in USA, in Africa, various lakes are in news because of algal blooms. अगर मैं इसको न्यूज से भी सर्च करूं बहुत आर्टिकल्स आएंगे. चलो इंडिया पे है. Okay, so there will be many such. India's east coast, west coast, in around the world. And now the examiner, maybe there's a lake which is often in the news, that can become the inspiration for the UPSC examiner to ask you a question around that lake. Yes, we can reduce this simply. आप बताओ, चलो सोचो क्यों हो रहा है, वहीं से आंसर आ जाएगा. Why is it eutrophication happening or algal bloom? Yes, so what I can do, number one, overuse of nitrates should be regulated, right? सेकेंड इज वी यूज, जो हम डिटर्जेंट्स यूज करते हैं, व्हेन से डिटर्जेंट्स, आप सोचेंगे सर डिटर्जेंट और लेक का क्या रिश्ता है? थिंक अबाउट ऑल द क्लीनिंग दैट हैपेंस. Okay, a lot of times when the washing of clothes have to happen, people do it around these water bodies, right? And rural भी नहीं, in even in parts जहाँ पे ना laundry, जैसे हर एक, you don't have the concept of laundry everywhere. So second issue is we use high phosphate detergents. Other than that, the sewage is also rich in phosphates or nitrates. Untreated sewage भी dump होता है. All of this contribute to this. So to stop it, the best solution is, or the best way is, treatment of water waste, treatment of sewage waste, limited use of fertilizers and regulated use of fertilizers. Okay? या फिर now there is a new variety of slow releasing fertilizers. The nutrients are very slowly released in that. All these things can be. So if you know why it is happening, you also know how to regulate it. Yes or no? ठीक है? Then right. Second point, so pehla point is eutrophication. I also gave you the basic idea about BOD, etc. Right? Second is large scale mining. People online, are you able to follow the concept? Large scale mining of phosphate rocks. Large scale mining of phosphate rocks for fertilizer production depletes natural resources. Natural resources. Okay. Last, you can come improper disposal of animal waste. Improper disposal of animal waste. And sewage. Improper disposal of animal waste and sewage increases phosphorus levels in water bodies. It increases phosphorus levels in water bodies. It increases phosphorus levels in water bodies. अब लिखो note करके eutrophication में whatever we have discussed the terms, we'll write it here also. I will again just briefly cover it when I do water pollution, then I'll not go because I've already explained these concepts. अभी इसको इसी को लिख लेंगे. The points we were discussing about algal bloom and eutrophication. Heading for you is eutrophication. And the reason is because I've talked about eutrophication for nitrogen also cycle and also for phosphorus cycle. So this is an opportune time for us to understand what is eutrophication. And for every term, algal bloom kya hota hai, dissolved oxygen kya hai, BOD kya hai, examples in India, around India, a short write-up we will write for this. Okay. The definition you already know, we'll repeat the definition again. What is eutrophication? Nutrient enrichment. अब तो याद हो गया होगा. Okay, so right, eutrophication is the nutrient enrichment of a water body ब्रैकेट में लिखो with nitrogen and slash or phosphorus. So it means with nitrogen and slash or. It means nitrogen and phosphorus can also be there, or nitrogen or phosphorus can also be there, right? Nitrogen and slash or phosphorus leading to abnormal growth of algae and aquatic plants, leading to abnormal growth of algae and aquatic plants. Full stop, right? It reduces water quality. It reduces water quality, comma, oxygen levels and biodiversity. Then write causes. Causes को भी हम simple लिखेंगे. Causes, you will write it in two terms. One is natural, like natural eutrophication. And second, man-made को हम बोलते हैं cultural eutrophication. So natural and cultural eutrophication. Natural eutrophication में you can give, देखो, it is gradual accumulation of nutrients. Natural eutrophication is gradual accumulation of nutrients over centuries. Gradual accumulation of nutrients over centuries. This is also known as, you can write in bracket, lake aging. AGEING. The aging of lake. And it's a very slow process, natural wala. Lake aging. Gradual accumulation of nutrients over centuries. Then come to cultural eutrophication. Dash लिखो, accelerated by human activities such as. अब इसमें मिनी पॉइंट्स लिखेंगे. सबसे पहला फर्स्ट पॉइंट इज एग्रीकल्चरल रन ऑफ. एग्रीकल्चरल रन ऑफ, यू कैन राइट ब्रैकेट में फर्टिलाइजर्स, पेस्टिसाइड्स, agricultural runoff, fertilizers, pesticides, sewage. Second is sewage discharge. Third is industrial effluents. You'll understand all of these are man-made. Industrial effluents. And last important point is detergents containing phosphorus. This is also one of the main reasons for Yamuna. Not the only reason, but one of the main reasons. Detergents containing phosphates. ठीक है, अब लिखेंगे प्रोसेस. Causes we've written, and we'll write the process. Very simple process, one by one. Write nutrient enrichment leads to algal bloom. Nutrient enrichment dash करके या you'll make an arrow leads to algal bloom. Okay, and of course you can write the algae die. The algae die decomposition by bacteria. The algae die decomposition by bacteria. Decomposition requires oxygen. Decomposition requires oxygen. Dissolved oxygen level fall, reduce. What simple? This is what is happening. Dissolved oxygen levels fall. Biological oxygen demand increases. Now you'll write lake जो है या water body है becomes hypoxic. HYPOXIC, hypoxic, ultimately becoming dead zone. Hypoxic means oxygen is less. Dead zone means oxygen khatam. So hypoxic is also one keyword and dead zone is also one. Lake becomes hypoxic and ultimately it becomes a dead zone. This is the main challenge. Yes. And of course because of this क्या होगा? Fish या फिर organisms या species they die. Basically loss of biodiversity will happen. You will write biodiversity loss. Right? And margins पे लिखो globally the dead zones are increasing in the recent times. It is not an India phenomena, it is a global phenomena. Dead zones increase कर रहे हैं. अगर अब आपसे कोई पूछे, if I ask you why are the dead zones increasing in the world, you tell me. वो तो सही है, but why? The answer is simply here. Natural was happening with its own pace. The challenge is agriculture runoff, fertilizers, pesticides, sewage discharge, industrial effluents. Okay, all of this is increasing. So from the simple write-up, back and forth questions can also be made, and you should be aware, right? So what have I said? The global dead zones are increasing. Okay, one of the best example again of that, this is Gulf of Mexico, Mississippi River. Okay, तो वो क्या हो जाएगा? अब आओ terms लिख लो, right? Key terms. We'll write DO and BOD separately. First is DO, dissolved oxygen. Write the amount of oxygen in water. DO is dash करके the amount of oxygen in water essential for aquatic life. Amount of oxygen in water essential for aquatic life. Second आ जाओ, BOD, biological oxygen demand. Right, amount of oxygen required by microorganisms. Amount of oxygen required by microorganisms to decompose organic matter. to decompose organic matter. फुल स्टॉप, नीचे लिखो, फिर इसी में लिखो हाई बीओडी, हाई बीओडी इक्वल्स टू, आप बताओ, मोर पोल्यूशन और लेस पोल्यूशन? अबे, हाई बीओडी, पोल्यूशन हाई और लो? जोश इज हाई और पोल्यूशन इज हाई? जोश इज नॉट हाई। चलो, तो हाई बीओडी लिखो, हाई बीओडी इज इक्वल टू हाई पोल्यूशन, हाई बीओडी इज हाई पोल्यूशन एंड ऑक्सीजन हाई और लेस? लेस ऑक्सीजन। When you revise your notes, high BOD लिखा होगा, so you hide what is written and then you try to know. Are you able to think, will this lead to pollution and will this lead to oxygen? What is the impact on oxygen levels and pollution levels? So if the BOD is high, right? What have we written? High BOD is equal to two things. Number one, high pollution and less oxygen. Yes or no? This means you can also write it, dissolved oxygen is inversely proportional to BOD. What does this mean? अगर dissolved oxygen बढ़ रहा है तो BOD decrease होगा. And conversely speaking, if the BOD is high, biological oxygen demand is high, that means pollution is high, that means dissolved oxygen will be less. This you should always remember. And we can use this even in case of Yamuna, in case of river Ganga, in different rivers. This will always be true. Right? Now, when Mahakumbh and some of the practices were happening, there were reports of very high amounts of pollution. So what would you say? The DO and BOD, what would have been the relation? When the pollution in a river is high, the BOD of that river, would it be high or not? It would be high. ठीक है, तो अब आप जब भी आर्टिकल्स पढ़ोगे न्यूज़पेपर, उसमें भी इसी तरह से लिखा जाता है. Then this will make a lot of sense to you, right? So this is one. So BOD हमने लिखा, DO लिखा. Then right, two more terms are there: algal blooms and toxic algal blooms, and then I'll give you, of course, some of the examples in India and around the world. देखो, algal bloom. देखो, it is the rapid growth of algae. Algal bloom is the rapid growth of algae due to nutrient excess. Due to nutrient excess. Right? Look, next point, makes water green. Makes the water green and foul smelling. Makes the water green and foul smelling. Third point, you also know, look, blocks sunlight. This blocks sunlight, which affects the ecological productivity. It blocks sunlight, which affects ecological productivity. Now we have already done what is ecological productivity, so you will tell me what is it. Production over time, ठीक है? In better terms, it is the production of organic matter during photosynthesis by plants over a time. Yes or no? ठीक है? This is one. And last point in this is it depletes oxygen during decay. Because decomposers need more and more oxygen. You have too many algae, right? Oxygen ज़्यादा consume होगी. So it depletes oxygen during decay. This is a normal algal bloom. Next is इसी का एक और part है toxic algal bloom, right? Toxic algal bloom. Toxic algal bloom, right? Certain species of algae release toxins. certain species of algae release toxins. I'll give you two examples of species. There can be many more. अभी के लिए दो लिख लो. Right, microcystis. One is this microcystis. Second, Carenia brevis. Carenia brevis. So first point what we've written is certain species of algae, they release toxins. Two examples we have seen. Second point, it is harmful for fish. It is harmful for fish, livestock, and humans. It is harmful for the fish, livestock, and humans. Third, में I'll link it to the current aspect also. देखो red tide example लिखेंगे third में. Red tide, this is also a term that is used. Red tides in oceans. Red tide in oceans caused by dinoflagellates like, now you know what are dinoflagellates, caused by dinoflagellates like, और ये example लिखेंगे Carenia brevis. Carenia brevis. Second example you can write cyanobacteria blooms. Cyanobacteria blooms in Lake Erie, USA. Cyanobacteria blooms, Lake Erie, EERIE, Lake Erie, USA. Comma, Velandur Lake, Bangalore. Okay. Then you can also write examples. कुछ example लिखते हैं इंडिया से and global. First we will write is couple of global examples. Okay. तो examples में one you can write, पहला तो लिखो Lake Erie, USA. Lake Erie, USA. डैश करके Cyanobacteria bloom. Lake Erie, USA. Cyanobacteria bloom. Second, Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico. Due to fertilizer runoff. Due to fertilizer runoff. Leading to dead zone. They're becoming a dead zone. Third global example is Baltic Sea. Baltic, Baltic. Any idea where is Baltic Sea? Close to Mexico or close to Canada? Hmm? Europe. And you should know Baltic countries also. Baltic countries, कोई idea? Two different terms. Scandinavian countries are different and Baltic countries are different. ठीक है. चलो, this also you should read. What are Scandinavian countries? What are Baltic countries? रोमानिया सुना है, एस्टोनिया सुना है, लाटविया सुना है. शायद ये भी यही हो. पढ़ना, चलो पढ़ना पढ़ना. नो नो नो, ऊपर. Baltic countries are surrounded above by Baltic Ocean. Okay. लिखो अभी इसको लिखो. The Baltic Sea is prone to chronic eutrophication. Prone to chronic eutrophication. Okay. Now I'll come to the Indian examples. One example we've seen is Bilandur Lake. Other example is Loktak Lake. ये सुना होगा आपने. Loktak Lake is in which part of India? Manipur. ठीक है. It is famous for which species? Dancing deer, the Sangai deer, right? That is a state animal of Manipur also. Bilandur Lake is in Bangalore, Belandur Lake. पहला एग्जाम्पल है. सेकेंड एग्जाम्पल इज लॉकटक लेक, मणिपुर. Okay, and one also you can write. Two more you can write. Chilika Lake. Where is Chilika Lake? Odisha. Chilika Lake, Odisha. यहाँ पे भी fish deaths हुई थी due to algal toxins. And last is Pulicat Lake. Now, can you tell me Pulicat Lake is in which state? और तमिलनाडु. सोचो कोई और. चलो, my statement. Pulicat Lake is spread across two states. True or false? This is a UPSC statement of 2017, by the way. The question said Pulicat Lake is spread only across two states. This was the statement. This is also true. It is spread across Andhra and Tamil Nadu. Now, my question to you is, which state has more of Pulicat Lake, Andhra or Tamil Nadu? ये आप देखोगे. And you'll be surprised. There's a huge disparity. It's not 50-50. शायद it is 96 and 4. But you'll see which is 96 and what is 4. So write Pulicat Lake and you can write bracket में Andhra/Tamil Nadu. So you'll understand. Pulicat Lake, Andhra/Tamil Nadu. ठीक है. Fine. Tell me four or five bad consequences of either algal bloom or eutrophication. 5 सोच के बताओ. चलो, loss of biodiversity is one. What about economic losses? The fisheries will get lost. That's an economic loss. Other than that, what about tourism? People will not come and visit. Third, fourth, socho. Think of public health, water quality, water safety, right? Diseases spread. Points बन जाएंगे. तो last में just एक heading लिखो. Consequences. If consequences. The consequences are also for eutrophication or for algal bloom. The consequences. Okay, so very quickly you can jot down some points, right? Loss of biodiversity. Second, economic losses due to economic losses of basically aquaculture and fisheries. Third is a tourism loss, which is again a subset of economic, but you can write as a separate point. Tourism loss. Then you can write water unusable for drinking, bathing. Water is unusable for drinking, bathing. Then public health risks from toxins. 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 Okay. So this covers the major part of your biogeochemical cycles. What have we done overall? You've seen gaseous cycles. We've seen sedimentary cycles. Okay, sedimentary में two we have seen. One is sulfur, but always remember sulfur will have a gaseous component also. Whereas the second one is phosphorus, but in phosphorus I've also gone into more details of the eutrophication. What is algal bloom? What is toxic algal bloom? What is dissolved oxygen? What is basically biological oxygen demand? And जो भी हमने locations लिखी हैं, please go back and see them at least. Okay, even if it is in India, even if it is outside, you should see that. Yes, that is there. Now, four functions of ecosystem. फिर से recall करो. In the sequence that we have done in the class, one is ecological succession, energy flow. Third is nutrient cycling, and fourth is homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis we will now cover in this particular head. For us, the bigger head is adaptations. In that, the very first term is regulate. So I will be linking homeostasis to this, whether the species are able to regulate their body temperature or not. That is what homeostasis, right? Now, couple of points, and then after that we will actually be seeing all of these things, right? And this is a very interesting part of your environment because this also overlaps with species, right? Initially I've told you some types of species. Remember कौन सी species सुनी हमने? Pioneer species, foundation species, okay, keystone, many of these examples. Now you will see that why certain species are having furs, why certain species fly, what are some of the unique adaptations of certain species, right? Why bears, for example, go for hibernation for 3-4 months or even 6 months, okay? And why some of the species will have long tail, some have a short tail, long ears, short ears, वो हम यहाँ समझेंगे under the broad heading of adaptations. So in your NCERT, 4 headings are mentioned. One is regulate, one is conform, one is migrate, one is suspend. Okay, and easily all the terms you can understand, right? What is the meaning of regulate? To be regulating the body temperature. Very few species can regulate the body temperature. Is this true or false? This is true. Okay, so when I talk about, let's say, humans, ourselves, we are able to. So basically, mammals are able to regulate their body temperature. Even birds can do that. But a lot of species cannot do this, which means even if there's a small increase or decrease in temperature, it is going to be very harmful for them. And in this context, then you understand global warming and climate change. The temperatures are increasing, carbon dioxide is increasing. This is a challenge to the life of species. Some species can adapt, but the ones that cannot adapt will get extinct. Now, I'll give you a very startling fact. चलो आपसे मैं पूछना चाहता हूं, how much wildlife would have been lost in the last 50 years? Just put any percentage that comes to mind. Last 50. Only the last 50. अगर हम बहुत ही millions of years कहेंगे, you can give me a very big number. But I'm only asking you just a percentage if you want to point. How much biodiversity would have been lost in the last 50 years? 1770. सुना है कहीं या वैसे estimate ले रहे हो? मैं 50 years की बात कर रहा हूँ. I'm not talking of a huge time span. चलो, you? कुछ number बस, any number. In the last 50 years, 30 to 40. 80 to 90 सब गायब कर दिया आपने. तो ये सब अभी अभी क्या दिख रहा है? Don't you see so many species? अभी तो Vantara is getting created and no, just I'm asking you. ठीक है, number can be high. People online. Any percentage that you want to pinpoint? Any percentage that you want to pinpoint? See, the 2025 environment questions we will be discussing. Okay, that there will be a proper video for that also in coming times. And this is again a year activity. We do it every year. So we'll also do it this year also. But at least on that front, the very many tough questions were there from the classes. So that is something that you can also see. Even on lectures on YouTube that are present. 70 हो रहा है, कंसेंसस बन गया? Okay. I just am waiting for a couple of responses for online and then I'll tell you the percentage. The percentage is actually very startling, okay, very shocking. Because आप सोचो कि सर इतने साल से for hundreds and thousands of years the life is going on. You're just asking me about the last 50 years. At max you can think so 10% होगा, 20% होगा, 30% हो सकता है. Right? The human being is the most dangerous species. कितना कर लेगा? The percentage according to the WWF's Living Planet report, that is 73%, 73. Okay, that's huge. Okay, 73% wildlife has been lost. When I start my lectures on biodiversity, I'll also give you this fact. Okay, ये जो हमने fact पढ़ा है कहीं पे margins पे, this is as per the Living Planet report, and this report is of 2024. That in the last 50 years, we have lost 73% of wildlife. In the last 50 years. That also tells you the element of pollution, the element of climate change, and of course, the human impact. Precisely because of cutting down of trees, cutting down of forests, habitat fragmentation, many things are happening. Okay, this is a very startling fact. Okay, and remember this report is published by World Wildlife Fund for Nature, WWF. Okay, now coming back to adaptation, and again, why I'm telling you this fact, you also need to remember many species are not able to adapt. They will get lost. Now they're getting lost either because of human intervention or because of changes in temperature or because of habitat destruction. All of these things combined is an issue. So this is a fact that you will remember with you. अभी तक दो बहुत important facts मैंने आपको बताए. One is increasing carbon dioxide levels, and one perhaps can be this. Okay, so slowly and steadily as your classes will go on for pollution, for every important theme, you will have the most important fact available with you. Now the benefit is you can easily use that in the introduction of your questions. I remember I gave you one question on carrying capacity, mains topic wala, ठीक है? So such, the more you now practice, because now you have some base. अब आप सोच पा रहे हो significance क्या है, how things are related. So slowly and steadily, theme wise as we cover, you will get an idea. Now, I'm talking to you about adaptations, and the very first thing I'll talk about, regulate. Fine. So this is a relatively easier context. चलो दो terms हैं, this also you get to know. First is there are three types of adaptations. So one is what the NCERT tells us, and another more specialized. So this is four terms are mentioned. Regulate, one is conform, one is migrate. Migrate बहुत हमें पता है अच्छे से. What is migrate? So there are birds, when it is very cold, they come to another area to survive. You can also say, sir, अभी Russia Ukraine में war हो रहा है. Birds may also think हमारी भी जान जा सकती है. They may come to India. Yes. For example, let's say Siberian crane is there. Okay, although it is now not found in India, but I'm just giving you an example. Migrate is why. Why species migrate? Because they want to save themselves because of harsh conditions. Okay, that is there. And the last is suspend. Okay, आप suspend सोचो बस in simple terms like how we do a fast. Okay, we don't eat. What do? We reduce our metabolic activity. The body's demand for food reduces. Now think for an organism. Why would organism do suspend? Because they know conditions are very harsh. Food बहुत limited है. They may also slow down their heartbeat. This is simply that if there is 15-20 days, they have to survive in very harsh conditions, and when the temperature is not conducive, they will do suspend. And even small and big animals do this. The bear does it in very harsh winter conditions. They sleep more. भागेंगे नहीं. अगर भागेंगे तो क्या होगा? भूख लगेगी. Right? So they don't walk at all. They reduce their metabolic activity. That is suspend. So there are various points that are happening here one by one. And second thing is the adaptations can be three-way. The adaptations can be structural, right? For example, जैसे देखो, a body part or a coloring that aids survival. Now, ये आपने term सुना है, camouflage, the protective coloration. So let's say in a forest everything is green just like your plants. and there is a specific insect etc which is colored just like plant, आपको दिखेगा ही नहीं वो. That is camouflage. So they blend their color just like the nearby regions. So it is very difficult for the preparator to catch them. That is known as camouflage. Even the army or the police also does it. They will use the same color just like the vegetation, so they are not getting caught. This is also used by insects, used by animals also. How many of you heard about chameleon, the girgit? What does it do? It changes its color. Now your homework is how is it able to change its color? You would also done the same exercise for Jugnu, okay? That is the fireflies. So now the question can be how chameleon, what is the mechanism in chameleon? क्यों हर तरह से रंग change करता है? And here we are only talking of the chameleon, okay? We're not talking of people who change their color, okay? ठीक है. So this is maybe a homework for you. And for this topic, I would want you to be very inquisitive. In your, let's say, whatever life you have lived, school में, college में कोई ऐसे example आपको कभी सोचने में आया, you discuss it here also. Right? Sir, I heard about a certain species, maybe in my area or something. This is a very unique adaptation. But the point is, because this subject is so broad, I'm telling you. That is why sometimes, even if you watch documentaries, maybe small, maybe you spend 1.5 hours watching something, this can be helpful. एक और term है mimicry. Normally you hear of mimicry of Shah Rukh Khan, mimicry of certain Bollywood actors. Yes? But mimicry is what? You are exactly mimicking the behavior. So there are certain insects which do mimicry just to save themselves. Okay? And they will then try to look like a predator. तो predator को attack ही नहीं करेगा इन पे. इनके भी examples हम देखेंगे as we move along. That one of the best examples of mimicry or camouflage. One example of camouflage everybody knows is chameleon. Okay? Now, physiological, it means, so structural means unki body part mein, they have either a body part or a coloring that aids their survival. Physiological simply means a function, right? So here, a certain body part helps in survival because that body part serves a function. For example, snake making a venom. Okay? Storage of food in a bulb. जैसे आपने देखा होगा, onions have a proper bulb. Okay? In certain plants, etc., there is a food that is stored. That is why the shape is there. Body का एक shape is performing a function. Right? Snake is again making venom. Snake and venom बहुत famous था अभी news में. A certain YouTuber because of that also getting caught. Now, I want to ask from you, are all the snakes having venom? So that means the question is, are all the snake bites, would all of them lead to death? That means, agar venom hoga, if the venom ultimately, this can lead to death. But the point is not all snake bites, not all snake bites are venomous, number one. Second is, there's also, if you want to counter venom, there is something known as anti-venom. And there are certain tribal groups in India which are very predominant for anti-venom, right? So, aage, when we move along, especially on snake also, we'll have a discussion that what are the types of, आपने सुना होगा rattlesnake, okay? What is the most poisonous snake? कुछ facts भी पढ़ेंगे साथ में, right? How is snake venom tackled in India? Are there some legal provisions? What are the tribes associated? So snakes is a topic that we'll do in more detail, okay? Right now I'll focus on regulate, but I'm just introducing the topic to you, right? And last is behavioral. This is the easiest one. What is the action that they're taking? पहले क्या था? A body part which produces something. It can be a venom. अगर venom produce हो रहा है, so that will be helpful. Similarly, think of allelopathy. Certain allelochemicals were getting released that were limiting the growth of other plants. And last में यहाँ पे क्या है? It is a coloring or a part of the body जहाँ दूर से. So structural part is directly visible, right? From the my site, that is protecting the survival. Physiological is a part of the body that has a specific function that leads to survival. And behavioral is your action, which means you fight, flight, hibernation, migration, because that is an action that they're taking. So these are also three types of adaptations, we can say. Yes or no? This can be divided. So names are maybe for the first time you're seeing what is structural, structure, or physiological, or behavioral. So these are certain examples. Now we move directly to regulate. Right? This is ultimately what is ये हम तब से बोल रहे हैं टर्म इतनी देर से, राइट? सो वी विल टुडे फोकस हियर. इन नेक्स्ट क्लास ऑनवर्ड वी विल देन गो टू सम अदर एरियाज एज वेल. अब देखते हैं इसको, होम्योस्टैसिस को. नाउ स्टैसिस is similar to static, yes or no? What is static? Something that does not change much. Okay, and homeo is ultimately related to your internal body, right? So homeostasis is maintaining constancy of internal body, right? So here constant body temperature, and this is again related to thermoregulation, how you regulate the temperature. Thermoregulation, right? Now very simple, this we've seen again and again. In summers, if it is very hot outside, what do? We sweat. Okay, in summers basically we sweat, and in winters we shiver, right? So we shiver so that the body can produce heat. This is our way of regulating the temperature, right? Last point देखो ध्यान से, success of mammals, human beings are mammals, right? It is largely because of the ability to maintain constant body temperature. It means whenever we go outside, if it is hot, we are able to control the temperature. If it is very cold, even then we are able to control the temperature. Yes or no? Success of the mammals is precisely because of this. And if I extend this further, okay, अभी फिर मैं इस ग्राफ पे भी आएंगे, just a moment. This is a point very important for us to know. 99% of animals, again I'm drawing directly from your class 12th NCERT, and nearly all plants, main thing is they cannot maintain constant internal environment, right? Which is why most of them will get extinct, they'll not be able to survive. And the reason is, देखो हम लोग, if we are able to conserve the temperature, we have to have spent energy on it. You have read about at every trophic level many part of energy is lost, and for us this is energetically very expensive, right? So which means all the cells, they should have certain nutrients available. We need energy to function. The main thing is thermoregulation is energetically expensive for organisms, or basic law of thermodynamics hai. If you want to conserve your temperature, you have to spend energy while doing so. And other organisms which are very small, बहुत जो छोटे organisms हैं, they cannot conserve this, they cannot save or let's say regulate their temperature. Even this is true, right? So thermoregulation, please remember, is energetically expensive for many organisms. This we know, okay? And this is a very important line, even on which questions can be asked. Heat loss and gain is a function of surface area. अब सोचो, let's say this is a small surface area, I lose less heat in a small surface area. However, if more surface area is exposed, I lose more heat. And if more surface area is exposed, this also means how much heat I lose. I should take more heat than that. So plus or minus जो final होगा, I should be storing some energy with me. Now put this in context and then just see the heading. एक ये heading पढ़ो. Why are small animals not found in polar regions? क्यों नहीं मिलते हैं polar regions में small animals? अब सोचो, पहली बात तो polar regions में you find big animals like polar bear. Now polar bear will eat organisms. What polar bear eats versus what they release as heat, उसका balance है. So they are able to eat substantial amount. They have proper, let's say, layer of fat, fur, and whatever heat is released, there is a balance. If an organism is very small, होगा क्या? They will eat less, but they'll release more heat. So क्या होगा? They'll not be able to survive. As simple as that. So nature में everything is there in a manner that aids survival. So what species you are seeing right now, those are the species that have lived through a very long time. Because nature का rule ही क्या है? Survival of the fittest. Yes or no? So here in this main thing is the smaller organisms, the heat that they lose because of the area that is exposed is far greater. than what they're able to eat in these conditions. That is why you don't find small organisms in this, right? मेन चीज है जो स्मॉल ऑर्गेनिजम्स है इनका surface area with respect to volume is larger. And why is that? Because they are losing more heat. Now, to understand this, please remember, how many of you have heard about this term? Nanotech, सुना है? Nanotechnology सुना है? या नहीं सुना? Nano means if you're working or operating at a very small scale. At a small scale, what happens? The surface area relatively is more. I'm saying relatively, right? So in this case, and why this example is there, main चीज है surface area. अगर छोटा सा ऑर्गेनिज्म है, based on their size, they lose more heat than what they can get here. Already the conditions are very harsh, right? तो small animals के साथ problem क्या होगा? They lose more heat, they eat lesser, they'll not be able to survive, which is why you need bigger organisms. Bigger organisms, totally how much amount of heat they lose versus what they eat, there is a proper balance in that. Hence, only they are able to survive. But this is not a problem in tropical regions. Tropical regions में small you can also find small organisms. You can find medium organisms. You can also find big organisms. तो नेचर में हर जगह पे क्या है चीज? Are you able to regulate your temperature? How much energy are you losing versus how much energy you are taking in? इसका बैलेंस होना चाहिए. नहीं होगा बैलेंस, आप सर्वाइव ही नहीं कर पाओगे. How many days would you be suspended, or how many days can you fast, for example? So this is again nature's way of ensuring which species are present and which species are able to survive. As simple as that. Yes? Okay. People online, abhi yahan tak you have been able to follow small and big organism. Abhi right now, we are only focusing on the regulate aspect. Okay? Okay. So abhi right now, main thing is again they would have to spend more energy to generate the heat through metabolism, and frankly that is not available with these species. That is a challenge, right? मेन चैलेंज क्या है? Why are small animals not found in polar regions? क्या आंसर है इसका? Right, so they lose more heat, as simple as that. ठीक है? That is a challenge that they face. Okay. Now here please write the heading regulation. We'll just write a couple of lines here overall for regulation. Now here we'll write, of course we'll start with homeostasis. Homeostasis is maintaining constancy of internal body temperature, that you can write. And a more specific term under homeostasis is thermoregulation. Thermo means temperature, regulation means keeping a similar temperature. Okay, and you can also give this example. Summers में just लिखो dash करके. We sweat and dash. In winters, don't write the entire lines. This is easy to understand. So summers में we sweat. In winters we shiver. And this last line, osmo may not very useful right now. And success of mammals is largely due to their ability. The success of mammals is largely due to their ability to regulate or maintain a constant body temperature. Okay? You have to draw. You have to just write a couple of lines, and then after that we'll dot one graph. एक ये line लिखेंगे. This is an important line. 99% of animals 99% of animals and nearly all plants. ये जो पूरा ये content आप सामने देख रहे हैं, this is from your NCERT only. So this is a very refined content. 99% of animals and nearly all plants cannot maintain constant internal environment. Cannot maintain constant internal environment. And this line, that heat loss and gain is a function of surface area. इसी line से एक question बनेगा आपका, that why small animals not found in polar regions. That heat loss ठीक है, heat loss and again heat gain are related to this, right? Now just draw a graph, या फिर इसमें एक लाइन का if you want to add small animals वाले में just write this, because when we again continue in the next one, I'll be talking and giving you more examples in this. That small animals basically have a larger surface area relative to their volume. Underline larger. And क्योंकि वो larger है उनके context में they lose more heat. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप वरना सोचो सर small है तो small ही होगा surface area. But based on their body and volume, they lose more heat. That is why relative term लिखा है. This relative is different from the other relatives, right? Relative means in relation to. Small animals have a larger surface area relative to their volume. Main point is this. That is why they lose more heat. And please draw this again from your एक NCERT का diagram है. इसको बनाओ and we'll end it here today. In the next class, we'll see conformers क्या है, regulators क्या है, partial regulators क्या है, examples इनके. अब देखो यहाँ पे क्या है, external level and this is the internal level. Now you draw this. I'll just explain here what simply this means. If the external level is keeping on changing, regulators क्या है, इनका internal level constant है. Regulators, irrespective of changes in the external level, have no change in their internal environment. So on the x-axis you have external level, y-axis पे क्या है, internal level. सबसे आसान है regulators. कुछ भी हो जाए यहाँ पे, anything that happens, the regulators have no change in their internal environment. Second is conformers in green here. मेरा external environment change हो रहा है, मेरा internal environment is also changing. They are conforming. If it is hot, they are changing as per that. If it is cold, it is changing as per that. इसलिए नाम है conform. There are some people who easily conform. जैसा situation है, they will adapt. हाँ भाई, चलो ऐसे ही करेंगे. These are conformers. And then there are partial regulators, which means they conform over a period of time, but फिर वो they will regulate themselves. 3 points we have seen. conformers, regulators, and partial regulators. Conformers, regulators, and partial regulators. And because the mention of all the three is there, so we should know exactly तीनों होते क्या हैं. Normally people are aware only about regulators, but there can be partial regulators also. क्या कैसे example हो सकते हैं? So what is this? This is a representation of the organism's response. How the organisms are responding. That is the main point. People online, have you been able to follow till here? यहाँ पे भी सबने यहाँ तक कर लिया है. This is where we'll end for today. Okay. Now we'll meet in the next one. Hmm? You'll you'll get to know. You'll get to know. That will be posted in your portal. ठीक है? ठीक है? If there are any doubts here, or we'll meet now in the next one. ठीक है? All right.